You know, it's funny, but the truth really is out there. I've had some marvelous emails recently from people about the history of the United States and the history of how and why they set themselves up as a country and what was going on with England. And actually, I do remember a lot of this stuff from when I was a kid in Ohio in the United States. But it wasn't made very clear. You know, they kept it very bland. But I was a good student, and I noticed and remembered a lot of what I was taught. For example, I remember that they said clearly that there was life on Mars. It was primitive by our standards, but there was some oxygen up there. And there were lichens and things, and there was water and stuff. And then they stopped talking about that, and the U.S. went off the gold standard, and we got embroiled in the 1970s in Watergate and stuff like that. And I do remember very clearly that most Americans were really against the war in Vietnam. They couldn't see why we were doing it. And it became apparent to me at that point that we were no longer in a democracy, that a majority of Americans were saying, let's get out of there, this just is a mess, it's an expensive mess, we don't seem to know why we're there or what the point is, except for the fact that a lot of Americans, I think, sensed that, you know, communists and stuff were being set up as the bad guys, and a lot of them had read 1984, and they already started to understand about false flags and why wars are perpetuated. And there's some very good information up there on the net. It's very available from insiders who say that the whole reason that we had the Vietnam War was merely to test weapons. You know, it's obviously the military-industrial complex at play here, and I don't know if you're so asleep that you really cannot understand this, but you know, just use your logic. I mean, it just seems as though these enemies are created. There are some enemies, but I really think they're usually from within. And people are distracted, and their tax money is taken from them, and they're just led, terribly led and deluded, and only fed selective information. You know, what they want you to hear, you will hear. And what they don't want you to hear, they will hope that when you hear it, you get distracted and forget about it, and go back into a passive state of being asleep. Now, Obama has left the building. I don't know if you people are aware of this or not, but he is in India, apparently, with several thousand people and his family, and a lot of warships and weapons. And I would just ask you to consider, why would the U.S. president do this at this point in time? Why would he abandon ship, so to speak? I mean, you know, there's just been another massive bailout in the United States. This is a joke, people. They're throwing billions of dollars again at people, you know, wanting to claim it. And how are you people going to pay for this? Most of you don't have jobs over there. 1 out of 8 of you are on food stamps, with no prospects for things to rebuild over there. None. Now, I don't know if you're aware of it, but the economy is doing pretty well over here in Paris, France, especially in Saint-Denis, where I live. People are unfortunately not necessarily getting the best paying jobs and stuff, but they are going back to work full-time in numbers. Saint-Denis is really, really coming up. And there are a lot of white, traditional, older French moving back to Saint-Denis. And many of the world's corporations are setting up their headquarters here. And it's a very, very vibrant city right outside of Paris. I think that a lot of Americans are thinking that the whole rest of the world is in the same lousy situation. They're just looking at Japan or Zimbabwe or whatever and just figuring, oh, we're all screwed. But I assure you, Europe is the world's richest country now. And the U.S. has fallen into third world nation status. You have to just look and see China is no longer buying U.S. government securities. Hardly anybody is. It's mostly the Fed who is snapping them up. And it's just this rotating cycle of just craziness and people making commissions. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm going to try to get some normal stuff done today, but I'm going to take a little time off and give my husband a nice lunch. He's out at the market now. And fresh things, fresh food. There's already some broccoli up here. And he's talking about bringing us some fish, which I feel is maybe not a good idea, but if he wants some, I'll cook it for him. I don't know if I'll eat it or not, though. All right, people. I would just ask you, please, open your eyes, and there's a lot of information available out there for you. Look at it carefully and think. And don't go for the Doritos. Don't just open a can of beer and zonk out in front of the TV. Use your brain. Remember the hippies questioning everything. Remember the beats who got off the grid. And just think. Universe rewards thinking.